It was the decade that transformed the country into the hippest nation on the planet. From mods and rockers to Carnaby Street fashion, the 60s were swinging and Britain was the place to be. Beatlemania, Mary Quant and a revolutionary miniskirt may have shaken the world. But in the midst of all this, there was a car that was a star too.
We were preoccupied in the design in getting good road holding and stability for safety reasons and to give the driver more pleasure.
The Mini was a classic British invention. Peter Sellers, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were all proud owners. Queen Elizabeth II was even seen behind its wheel. But one event really catapulted the Mini to its worldwide fame, and it started miles from British shores.
This is the city of Minsk in Belarus, formerly part of the Soviet Union. And it was here in this rather chilly spot that a swashbuckling young Irishman began an odyssey, which was to become one of the most talked about events in British motorsporting history. The year, 1964, the event, the Monte Carlo Rally. And the driver in question, well, he was behind the wheel of a rather famous red and white Mini Cooper.
Belfast-born Paddy Hopkirk was just 31 years old when he and co-driver Henry Liddon steered the Mini to victory at what was probably the world's most famous motorsport event. The rally started in different cities throughout Europe and covered over 2,000 miles before drivers converged in the French city of Reims to begin the special stages in the Alps. After 4 days on the road, the climax took place on the streets of Monte Carlo. Spectators and press gathered in their thousands to watch competitors tackle the final stage on the famous Grand Prix circuit. 1964 was the first time the rally had started in Russia. And for the boys in car number 37, this was their first taste of life behind the Iron Curtain.
It was a victory that completely revolutionised the Mini, put it firmly onto the global stage. Paddy Hopkirk achieved the seemingly unachievable. Now, 40 years later, I'm here in Minsk to start retracing that monumental journey which covered many thousands of miles across Europe. And my co-driver? Well, none other than the legend himself, Mr. H. How are you?
Good evening.
Listen, it's chilly in this place. Why couldn't you have started somewhere a bit more exotic?
It would have been a good idea.
So this fantastic journey you've dragged me all the way out to Minsk to recreate. Run me through it very quickly.
Well, we went from here down to the Polish border, through Poland, down into Warsaw, and then down into Czech Republic, with Czechoslovakia then, crossing to Germany, France, then common route from Reims right down through the mountains to Monte Carlo.
That's a long way. What's it like being back in Minsk? It's blooming chilly.
It's not as cold as it was then. It was minus 39, I think, in the evening, certainly minus 27 during
minus
the day.
Minus 39. All right, Paddy, but where's 33 EJB, the legendary car you won the rally in '64?
Well, I think that's a priceless relic now. It's in the Heritage Museum in Gaydon in England, and they certainly weren't going to let us bring that back here, I don't think.
Well, that is a shame. But it does mean that, well, we're not doing the journey in that thing either. Before I tell you what we are going to do the journey in, which has air conditioning, I'm glad to say, and a heater, I want you to take me around some of the old stomping grounds. You got some good stories, haven't you?
Right, okay, you're on.
Paddy arrived in Minsk 3 days before the start of the rally. Time enough to explore the Forbidden City and for this enterprising young Ulsterman to try his luck in the black market. So what exactly was he up to?
Is this bringing back any memories?
Can't believe it. It's same hotel but lit up now.
What brought you to this kitchen in 1964?
Well, we heard that the Russians were gagging for nylon stockings, and we brought some over from England. And when we got here, we came into the kitchen because we heard we could do a deal with the chef. We could swap these nylons, you see, for some Beluga #1 caviar.
That sounds like a fair deal. So when you tracked them down, what happened then?
Well, we did the deal here, and I got a huge tin of Beluga #1, took it out, smuggled it out, hoping to sell it in Monte Carlo for a lot of money, but when we won the rally, we actually had a big caviar party and ate it instead.
So you just ate the whole lot?
Yeah.
And caviar wasn't the only delicacy on the menu. Party-loving Paddy also recalls a night out at a Russian circus with a group of roller skating girls. from Essex.
Came here and they made a big fuss of us inside, and
They treat you like superstars when you arrive in town, yeah?
Well, you see, it was the first time Russia had ever been a starting point in the Monte Carlo Rally, and so Minsk did make a big excitement about it, and they put the spotlight on us. We were in the third row, when Ernest Macmillan from Ulster was there, and then the three girls from the hotel that were doing the roller skating act, they said any volunteers from the audience, and Ernest was he was in there, and so they were whirling him around on the skates.
Speaking of which, we need to get our skates on, hit the road. We have a few miles to do. I think it's about time I introduce this car to you as well.
Right,
it's got one or two features I'm particularly looking forward to trying out.
So that's Minsk. The women are very pretty, though they never smile. It's so cold my extremities are making a bid for freedom, and it's the only place I've ever been that has Caesarean salad on the menu. I'm certainly ready to hit the road.
Meet your new home for the next week or so. New Mini. It's got a heater and it's got 4 wheels, and I think that's what we need. But remind me, 1964, how long did it take you to do the whole journey?
We did it in 4 days and 3 nights.
4 days and 3 nights. We're not going to be anywhere near that pace. We'll do it slightly more leisurely fashion, but we have a few surprises along the way. In the meantime, I'm freezing. We've brought our love back to Russia, now let's take it out again.
299 cars started the rally that year, with just 28 departing from Minsk. You're total nervous being behind the Iron Curtain. I mean, it was the height of the Cold War after all.
Well, you were always nervous about the unexpected, that they might just say to hell with the rally and block the road, or, and you couldn't communicate language-wise and what have you. They just do things very differently from the West, so it was very sinister.
So who was the favourite in '64? The Ford Falcons, or?
Ford Falcons, definitely the favourite. And of course, Ford spent a lot of money on preparing. The other teams were actually spending a lot more money than we were. Mercedes were gagging to win it as well. Everybody was. It was very important to win that rally because it was front page news and it sold motor cars.
Tell me a bit about Henry Liddon now.
Oh dear, Henry was great. He was a very professional co-driver, and
he wore good glasses.
He's got a beer bottle sort of bottoms on his own, and glasses were so thick, but he was very competent. He was a lovely man.
Fast left, 50, fast right.
He also did a lot of driving. I mean, on the easier sections of the way, the road sections of the way down, I was able to get quite a lot of sleep so I could stay fresh for the final special stages from the run down from Minsk.
How do you think we're going to get on, all right?
But I'm sure we'll have stressful moments, and that's when you find out what men are made of.
The mark of the man.
I'm sure it'll be very good.
That'll be a bit of optimism then. Doesn't last long though.
So much for retracing a monumental journey. It's already turned out to be more monumental than we could have predicted. We're only about 4 hours outside Minsk, and behind me is the first Belarusian border checkpoint. It took us about 5 hours to get through that. That brought us into this holding area, because over there is the Polish border checkpoint. We got in here about 3 o'clock this morning. Everybody's feeling a bit tired. We've been stuck here for 6 hours. Talk about uncertainty and the Cold War. It just seems like 40 years on, things are still decidedly chilly.
So we're barely underway, and already we're on first-name terms with sleep deprivation.
We've just sat in that queue for 10 hours trying to get out of Belarus and get into Poland. It's actually worse in 2004 than it was in 1964.
Absolutely, and I mean, we were one of many. I mean, it wasn't as if there's anything wrong with our documentation or the car or paper. It was just gross incompetence and the fact that more people had got over the border.
Paddy, you grew up a bit kind of obsessed with, I mean, you were particularly into the Monte Carlo rally, weren't you? What was the personal background to your kind of interest in the rally?
Well, it was the one to win. I had done a few, so I knew what to expect, really. And
when did you first do the Monte? What year?
I think 57. I did 13 in all. Yes, so this must have been about my 8th or 9th Monte, I think. 8th, maybe 7th, 8th.
So the Monte was the jewel in the motorsport crown, really, wasn't it? I think you have events like the Monaco Grand Prix is very famous, the Le Mans 24 Hours is very famous, and the Monte Carlo Rally. I would say those are probably the three kind of blue ribbon motorsport events.
The thing was, the rallying was front page news, and it was the fact that everybody just thought the idea of driving car for 3 or 4 days through the night, ice and snow, the challenge of the mountains, the weather, the countries, it was an adventure, you know. You know, you set the clock as you left the control point, and you knew you had 500 kilometers to do in 500 minutes.
Right.
And but you didn't hang around, and what you did was you drove rather rapidly to build up time in case anything went wrong.
Yeah.
If you did stop and you said we've got an hour in hand or something, that was the time you suddenly got a lorry overturned or a level crossing down. Your journey was uncertain about, like our border crossing. We didn't know we were going to be held up for 8 or 9 hours at the border. It was always like that in those days.
And the Monte Carlo Rally wasn't just for the boys and their toys.
So the women rally drivers in the 60s they weren't just there making up the numbers, were they? Or they weren't just there because it was good publicity. They were actually seriously good drivers as well, weren't they?
They were good.
Did they ever beat you? Were you ever beaten by a woman, Paddy? You were, weren't you?
I think Pat Moss beat me once in an event. But no, I think in general, it's a bit like Formula One. It's more of a man's sport.
Because stamina, or
we're just superior, really, I suppose, at these sort of things.
I think the post bag is starting to bulge with letters from irate feminists, Paddy.
We were already feeling a little weary and still had a grueling 8-hour drive ahead that day. But our spirits were lifted as we approached Warsaw. Many fans and car clubs heard news of our journey and were gathered to welcome their hero on the outskirts of the city.
That's very good.
You're going to find out some signatures from us. Very lovely.
This was my first taste of the Paddy Hopkirk Global Fan Club.
It was a bit quiet and immense, but here we are on the outskirts of Warsaw, and you've just been besieged by about 15 minis and all these fantastic. How do you feel?
Well, I feel very good. I'm dying to meet the man who was actually here 40 years ago. You know? But it's really great to see them. Fantastic.
They really still care about it, don't they?
Oh, lovely. Absolutely wonderful.
Right, let's crack on into Warsaw.
Right.
Old minis, new minis, men, women, dogs, cuddly toys, they've all turned up to experience the Hopkirk legend up close and personal. And I'm glad they did, because with Paddy's sense of direction, we'd still be trying to find Warsaw city centre now. The Palace of Culture was one of many official control points throughout the rally, requiring drivers to clock in. Cars that failed to do so were automatically disqualified. For those who could afford the time, it was a chance for a quick refreshment and a loose stop while mechanics dealt with any technical problems. Word of Paddy's journey had spread fast. To mark his arrival, the Poles had recreated the original checkpoint.
Look at this.
I think we had a Longines clock somehow. I think we had a stop time. Yeah, I think so. When I get
Time for Paddy to soak up the media attention and meet the original time controller from 1964.
Do you remember him from 40 years ago? They look a bit better then. Well, I know Poland's about to join the EU, Paddy, but land of contrasts or what? What a reception.
Yes, well, the Poles have always been very good at hospitality, and this is no exception. And back in 40 years ago, we actually went through Warsaw on our way to get the cars to Minsk, and I mean, they threw a party that...
You didn't want to leave, did you?
We nearly didn't get to Minsk at all.
What about when you were on your way back, though?
No. This was just a control point. We had very little time to enjoy ourselves then. But they're lovely, lovely people, Polish.
So what do you remember of the control point? This was your first...
Well, I remember this building here very well. I mean, and it looks exactly the same, and it is the same. And the same controller was here today that was here 40 years ago. He's 1 year older than me.
Is he?
And it's very nice that they set the control up and all. Very nice.
Warsaw's even more of a party town these days, but unfortunately we just haven't got time to savour the flavour. Not with another 5-hour drive on the agenda to the city of Wrocław. What we need now is a meal, a hot bath and a good night's rest.